Hello, good morning, everyone. Welcome to another beautiful day on planet Earth, and welcome to our information session today, making use of the building control system for improved operations and energy efficiency. Today, I will be joined by my colleagues, Peter Crabtree, Robert Nirenberg, and Jingjing Liu from the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. And now I'd just like to invite each of them to say a few things before we head into this webinar. Peter, would you like to start?
Certainly, Larry. Thank you. And thank you all for joining us this morning for this very important session describing this training that we're going to be doing. It's so critical. Welcome.
Morning, everyone. As Peter said, welcome. We appreciate you taking your time to be here. We're really excited to be able to offer this training. We put a lot of work into it, and we hope that this information session will be helpful for you to get the justification to sign up for it, and hope you've got a bunch of questions at the end. Jing?
Yeah, thank you, Robert. Hi, everyone, including those of you who may be watching the recording later on. Thanks for your interest. We hope this training will be very interesting and useful to you. So can't wait to share more information with you about this opportunity.
All right, thanks. And our other co-principal investigator, Ted Walensky from Milwaukee Area Technical College, sends his regrets. He's busy teaching class. That's what faculty do. Now, with our agenda for today, we're going to have a brief introduction regarding our host organizations, the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab here in Berkeley, as well as a quick overview of BAS Center and our activities for the past 12 years. Then we'll be looking at an overview of the training cohorts or groups. And there are three, but today's event will be focused on the training for the managers and the engineers. Then we'll get into the importance of the training, as well as the goals and the content matter. And then with that, we'll be following up with a review of the training schedule and the registration website. And then we'll be glad to take your questions and answers. We are in meeting mode, so I would just ask that if you're not speaking, please, of course, stay muted. If you have a question, you can put it in the chat. And we're glad to take questions along the way, but if it looks like we'll be answering those questions anyway later in the presentation, we'll cover it then. Now, regarding the overall goal of the training, we're going to be focused on building automation systems as they are used in commercial institutions. And the trainings, depending on what group you're in, will vary. For instance, the manager's training will be strictly online, whereas the engineer's training will be a combination of both online and in-person sessions here at the Berkeley Lab. And again, right, we understand that most commercial buildings these days, right, they are incorporating a lot of advanced technologies, building automation systems, energy management systems, whatever you want to call it, right? They are integral to the daily operations. And so that's why it's important that we focus on upskilling the incumbent workforce around data analytics, troubleshooting, and grid responsive energy load management. And keep in mind that the length of training will vary depending on which group you're in. Jingjing will tell us a little bit about the lab and DOE's goals here.
So hi again, my name is Jingjing Liu. I'm a researcher at the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. I reside in the Building Technology and Urban Systems division here at the lab. So majority of the work that we do here at the lab is funded by the Department of Energy, particularly the Building Technology Office, which has been primarily focusing on reducing the carbon footprint in the building sector, which accounts for a very large portion of the carbon emissions across all sectors in our society. So this is really important work for combating the global climate change. And so our goal is to heavily reduce the energy consumption of buildings so as to reduce the carbon emission. But in addition to the efficiency side of things, which is to reduce how much energy we use, at the same time, it's also really important to start thinking about when we actually use energy. So the time of the day that we use energy is getting more and more important to reducing carbon emission as well. And what I'm showing here on this slide at the bottom on the left is a duck curve. So this is a pretty well-known issue that in California, because of the solar generation that has been added to the grid, we see the net energy consumption on our electrical grid is often very low. And sometimes we even need to dump some clean energy just because there's not enough demand in the middle of the day, especially in the spring season. And as you see in the evening, we often have this very steep ramping curve. When everybody go home from work, our energy consumption really increase and peaking. And our grid operators have increasingly challenging job in terms of ramping up all the energy generation resources in order to keep up with the energy demand. So this is saying that we have an increasing challenge in terms of, where we have a great opportunity to, use energy consumption during time of the day when there's more clean energy available, and use less when the grid is more stressed. So, and a lot of that is looking at the future operations of our buildings in order to help with that issue. So at the DOE labs, we have been working on something called the Grid Interactive Efficient Buildings for several years, and looking at how can we leverage building technologies and building automation systems to help us achieve that more easily. So I'm showing a couple of landmark studies in that regard for your reference. If you are working in the operating buildings, maintaining buildings, or maybe your instructor that teaches HVAC technologies, this issue, we would love to bring it to your radar, because this is where the future reside is we need to increasingly thinking about how buildings can be better citizens on the electrical grid. I gave that example in California, but we all know there are other grid emergency issues elsewhere in the country. Texas had emergency situations in the winter a few years ago. in California, we had some summer peak emergency situations. So with the climate change, such situations will probably be happening more frequently, and there's a lot that buildings can help. So in this training, you will see my colleagues at the BAS Center will dive into telling you how we can leverage building automation systems, data analytics, troubleshooting to make sure our buildings operate efficiently. And then it allows us to think towards how can we leverage that capability to implement some strategies to use energy also in a time-smart fashion. So with that, I'll hand it off.
So I have seen BAS Center grow since its inception in 2012. And, we are funded by the National Science Foundation. We started out as a national center with a mission to help grow the workforce to support high performance building technicians, including engineers and operators. And to that end, we are guided by the need to create a sustainable set of buildings that will, again, reduce our carbon emissions while promoting, low-cost operations as much as possible through energy conservation. And then, of course, the need to make sure that we are keeping our occupants safe through healthy buildings, right? Having adequate ventilation, making sure people are productive. We work with about 70 plus colleges, community and technical colleges across the US, right, to help them advance their programs around commercial HVAC, energy management, and building automation. And currently, we are very much in the thick of moving our accreditation along for high performance building operations professionals. We currently are in the pilot phase. If any of you think you might be interested in taking our pilot exam, please get in touch with me ASAP. And then just briefly over the 12 years or so, right, we've been offering workshops for our instructors, again, to help them move the needle on their curricula. Each year we offer a national conference. It's called the National Institute. That's all done virtually. We also offer technical assistance with curriculum and lab development. If you're interested in seeing our recordings, and we have plenty, recordings from various workshops, webinars, you name it, you can go either through the BAS Center website or our YouTube channel. And I've just listed 3 titles there as an example. And then finally, we do have curriculum documentation. That's for our model curriculum programs. Those are available by request. But otherwise, the recordings, research papers, and other resources are available 24/7. And there's the URL for BAS Center. Okay. As I mentioned, as we opened up, we are offering 3 trainings this spring. And you'll see the 3 different groups there. Again, we'll be focused on the managers and engineers. And these are free trainings offered through the courtesy of the Department of Energy. So thank you, DOE, for helping to support this very critical program. You'll see if you look in the lower left-hand corner, right, we have 24 seats available per group, right? And that's limited due to some technical constraints. For the managers, that training starts March 22nd, runs through April 12th, right? And there are 16 hours total of online education there. And then for the engineers, that is definitely more comprehensive, starting April 26th, running through June 14th for a total of 62 hours. There's a combination of both virtual lectures as well as coming to the LBNL and being able to use their state-of-the-art facility Flex Lab as part of those hands-on exercises. And then again, the faculty will have another announcement later on that will happen in the June, and that will run 3.5 days. All right, Peter.
So I want to talk for just a few minutes why this training is so important for facility managers. And this, we've been at BAS Center, we've been focusing on BAS or EMS, whatever control system terminology you use. We use BAS. We believe that building controls are at the heart of efforts to improve building operations. I was just reviewing, go back, please, Larry. I was just reviewing a large-scale study of decarbonization in California that was done at UCLA in 2019. There was lots of discussion about so many different issues, but nothing really much about the role of people in the trenches, facility managers and building engineers, who really have to execute whatever changes we're hoping to have. So this is really our focus. Building control systems are often poorly understood and underutilized by operations staff. This has been the complaint of the design engineers for the last 20 years. So let's address that problem. Let's really dig into using the building control system effectively. And the role of facility managers is so important because they can support the engineering staff in better use of the control systems. Without that support, they may not really. So the facility manager role is very, very important. And you see that in ASHRAE Guideline 32, which looks holistically at improving building performance. The role of the facility manager is crucial in supporting and understanding the capability of the BAS system and supporting staff in using it effectively. With this training, facility managers can set realistic expectations on its use and support building engineers in achieving those goals. And finally, better use of the building automation system can help realize decarbonization goals and grid interactive energy management goals. I happen to be in Alberta, Canada, during the winter. Temperatures dropped to about -35, and everyone in the province suddenly got an alert that the grid was in very serious trouble. Within 30 minutes, 200 megawatts of demand had disappeared from the grid. So we know that this whole notion of grid interactive energy management, it is here, it is now. We need to become much more aware of it in the operations side. And as Jingjing was looking at that duck curve, this is not just a California phenomenon. It is it's an international phenomenon. As we get more renewable on the grid, it's just going to become more and more important. So it's another key issue that we want to address with this training.
All right, so the manager training, as Larry already stated, lasts for 4 weeks. We're looking at 4 consecutive Fridays. And you can see the topics here that we've broken out. Control basics, understanding how your control system works at a base level. We're not going to get really in depth with it, but to give you an understanding of what it's capable or what it's built out of, so you can understand what it's capable of, and to support what we're going to talk about later in sessions. We're going to follow that up with energy efficiency and how you can use your building automation system to improve your operations capabilities. Let's face it, how many people, and this is a rhetorical question, but how many of you managers out there actually feel that you have enough building operations staff to handle the issues that you're dealing with? How many of you can get a contractor exactly when you need them, especially when it comes to your building automation systems and your more complex HVAC systems? How often does that happen? Wouldn't it be better if you could actually have an understanding of when your team is capable of dealing with a problem versus having to contract it out? Wouldn't it be nice if if you know how to look at your system and talk to it so that it could tell you when it's broken, instead of you having your team having to find the issues all of a sudden via complaints? That's what we're talking about. The third week, we're dealing with more of the user interface and getting into those deeper topics on what the control system can do and how you can interact with it. And last, of course, is one of those things that drive what we have to do is understanding the data that your building is producing, how to take a look at it, find anomalies, and things like that. Next slide. Thank you. So the big takeaways that we're looking for, there's a lot of information in these sessions, but these are kind of the big items that I wanted to highlight. You know, understanding what your system can do for you, instead of it just being kind of this big, scary black hole of, you know, magic. How does it work? How to get around within your system. You know, 20 years ago, building automation systems weren't all that friendly to use. You really kind of had to know exactly what you were doing and know a bunch of tricks to get the information you wanted. Nowadays, that is not the case anymore. They're actually pretty friendly if you know a couple of basic things. Understanding the limitations of your system and where it is a great tool to use, especially when you're dealing with troubleshooting and that data analysis that I mentioned before. And, you know, again, understanding what your team is capable of. I'm not going to lie to you, building automation systems are complex, but you've got smart people working for you. You're a smart person as well. So there's nothing that you can't get an idea, at least, whether it's something that you can handle internally or something that you have to handle externally by calling a contractor. Back to you, Peter.
Thanks, Robert. So why is this training so important for building engineers? As we said before, effective use of building controls is central to improving building operations. Essentially, we believe that by having more engineers in the operational space with better knowledge of how to use the BAS system, even if you're contracting out, if you have someone on staff who's specializing, the more people that can access vital information, that can do troubleshooting using the system, that can identify problems that are arising from the system, the better you'll be able to operate. There was an instance that I heard about recently, a large biomanufacturing company in the peninsula of the Bay Area. The facility manager and the operations staff could not even control the schedule, the building schedule, the equipment schedule, because they had contracted out the BAS system and it was all run by this contractor. They had no access to anything and the schedule was running 24/7. They couldn't fix it. We don't want that to happen. We believe that if you are empowered to use the system, you can work on the schedule, you can refine it, make it do what it needs to do in-house. So this is a very comprehensive training. It's not a whole lot of time, but we want you to get your hands on the system, work with it, become familiar with it, and be able to use it at the end of the day more effectively. And we'll also be talking about energy efficiency and energy management along the way and how it can be used for those purposes. Next slide. Go ahead, Robert.
All right. One thing that I forgot to mention on the manager's training, but applies very strongly to the building engineers, is these trainings are not going to be all PowerPoint and lecture. There is hands-on components to every one or every portion of these trainings. We at the BAS Center do not believe in you just listening to folks talking. That is not generally a great way for most people to learn. Some people learn well that way, a lot of people don't. So we're putting this into your hands with the help of LB&L and their Flex Lab facility. So there are hands-on components to all of this. But back to the building engineers. Again, you know, these systems are not simple systems. Climate control systems, building automation systems, heck, even lighting systems have gotten so much more complicated over the last handful of years. And they're not going to get simpler. Let's face it, as we're chasing energy efficiency, as we're chasing operational efficiency, these systems do not get simpler, but they do get more automated. So understanding how these systems work becomes a much more critical skill. So building operators or engineers, excuse me, you're going to start off again with control basics. This is going to go more in depth than the managers do, because the managers need to understand the basic ideas of the system. But as we all know, building engineers, you're often the ones tasked with fixing it. Okay, so having those basic skills, understanding how to troubleshoot it, how to fix it, that's really useful. Following in with overview of energy efficiency and decarbonization. These are big topics. We're not expecting you to implement these things, but if you understand how they are supposed to work in the first place, dealing with them, their implementation, fixing it when it gets broken becomes much easier. Let's face it. Next up, alarms. Every building has issues. If you find a building that doesn't have issues, I can show you a building that doesn't exist. You know, one of those things. And alarms are one of the greatest tools we have for optimizing what we decide to deal with in a given day. Because the bigger the building, the more issues. So prioritizing your time becomes really important. And managing your alarms is one way to do that. And the unfortunate thing is, if you don't manage your alarms, they will manage you. So when we get an alarm, we need to be able to look at it and see what a problem is. We need to be able to decide whether we've got a problem with a sensor or if it's a bigger problem. Trend analysis lets us do that. Dealing with some of the deeper tools built into the interface that take more time to learn, less surface items, but more power. That's going to be another thing. How your system communicates with itself or with other systems is a deep topic and very frequently misunderstood. But if you can comprehend the basics of it, again, that makes troubleshooting and understanding whether you can fix it or you need to call an expert, or if you've got an idea on how to improve your system, but you're not sure how to do it, understanding if it's even possible to do it the way you're thinking of. Communication protocols are essential to modern systems. And basic programming. I know, scary topic, right? This isn't the wiring, this isn't the mechanical troubleshooting, this is actually a little bit of computer programming. Modern control systems are getting easier to program. And it is not beyond your capability to program these. Oftentimes contractors don't give us access to be able to, but again, understanding how the programming works can give you a much better idea of how to fix your systems and when they're misbehaving, what might be a cause. Of course, all of this leads to troubleshooting from beginning to end. There are so many spots that our systems can have issues, mechanical issues, electrical issues, programming issues, sensor failures, how to differentiate one from the other, and when it's something you can fix, when it's something you've got to call in for help. And finally, one of our last topics that we're going to cover for the building operator or engineers is loop tuning. Anytime we have an analog control signal, something that is instead of just an on-off value, it's a percentage. Things like fan speeds, outside air dampers, valves. These are common things. Well, behind those controls, we have what's called a loop. And if you've ever seen one of those devices that just bounces up and down constantly and never kind of gets to a nice even keel, that's often a loop tuning problem. And having worked as a building automation system technician, as a programmer for new construction, I can tell you there is not enough time on new construction or remodels for the control contractor to properly tune most of the loops in your building. Big systems, yes. Small systems, VAV boxes, zone controls, very infrequently is there enough time to really get those tuned in for optimal operations. So that's something where you can pick it up. And I know it's one of those nickel and dime type items, but you've got a decent sized building, even medium sized buildings, 50 zones. Little tuning things can make a big difference. So understanding how those loops work and how to make them work better can be really, really useful. Next slide, Larry. Thank you. So big takeaways for the engineers: understand the basic capabilities of any building automation system. 10, 15, 20 years ago, every system was unique and the capabilities that they provided were fairly unique. Anymore, that's not the case. Modern building automation systems, especially the head end where you interact with it, very similar. So if you can use one building automation system, you can use another. I'm not saying you can program another. I'm not saying you can build another. That's a different topic. But you can use it because they are all similar. Okay. And understanding how to navigate those systems is really useful. I know just the high point items. Okay. How to manipulate your system to get you the energy efficiency gains so that you can be the heroes for your managers. Because let's face it, everybody's chasing dollars on this. Everybody's chasing energy efficiency. So if you can be the person who implements that kind of thing If you can fix the problems to reduce energy usage, you're a hero. Okay. Understanding when your system is working and when your system is not working properly, it is a really amazing skill. I've been doing this for 18 years as contractor, as a building operator, as a building manager, as a teacher. The number of people out there who live in one of two categories when you're running a building is significant. Whether it's somebody who never trusts the system or who always trusts the system. Neither of those are good strategies. You have to be somewhere in the middle and understand when to trust the system and when to suspect the system of issues. So we're going to go over a lot of things like that to give you those tools to understand when there's a problem with the system itself. And then, of course, how to perform basic repairs. Let's face it, how many of us complain about the things that we can't fix at home in our lives? I'm talking like cars, TVs, things that used to be repairable. Just throw away technology, right? Well, how do you throw away an entire building? That's something that we've got to know how to fix. Next slide. All right, our final training here, cohort, excuse me, is oriented towards faculty. This is one of our annual events. This is our summer workshop where we focus on building automation systems. So if you're a faculty member, if you're an adjunct faculty member, if you know someone who is a faculty member in an HVAC or controls or something like that, reach out to them. Let them know that this exists. They may already know, they may not. Okay. But for us, this is June 4th through the 7th. It will be at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab and also hosted by the California Energy Institute at UC Berkeley. And our major topics are, most of our faculty have been to a few of these trainings and understand a lot of the things that we go over for the managers and the building operators. This is giving them a look ahead at what's coming on those big topics, especially grid interactive efficient buildings, GEP, that Dr. Liu talked about at the beginning here. It's a huge item. And as Peter said, it's coming. So, loop tuning. Again, this is something our faculty have been asking for. We're finally delivering it because it's not a commonly known topic. Peak load shaving and demand reduction strategies. Again, this falls into that grid interaction and energy efficiency. These are bigger topics, how we implement those. And we go over troubleshooting every year to some extent, whether intentionally or unintentionally in our workshops. We have to fix things. So we talk about it. We deal with troubleshooting these bigger issues. So if you know a faculty person or if you are an adjunct, think about it. Next up. All right, so I'm going to take over the screen share from Larry here. We are going to jump to the website, which you all probably already have seen at least a little bit of. So the website that you registered for this webinar is also where you go to register for the training itself. So if we scroll down a little bit on the main page, you're going to get to the registration options, okay? So we'll just start with our facility managers, click on Learn More. You can see the in-depth schedule. You can see the dates, the times, and the topics that we're dealing with, okay? One of the things that we do want to stress is that you need to be there for these trainings. We are going to record them, but if you aren't there, then the hands-on portion becomes much harder to deal with. And you aren't going to get the benefit out of it, especially because we build as we go through. So if you miss week 1 or week 2, week 3 and week 4 are going to be really, really hard. So we want you there the entire time. We have an application down here below. We've got a bunch of our standard information questions. This is us just trying to get an idea of who you are, who your company is, and what you can get out of this kind of a training. That's what these questions are oriented towards. Okay. Last question is one of the ones that's really important. Will you be able to attend all the sessions? Okay. I'm going to go back, take a look at building engineers here. Again, in-depth schedule, times, topics. You will notice, obviously, that this one is a little bit longer. We're 6 sessions, but a lot more hours. Part of the reason for that is we've got 2 sessions that are in person at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab for multiple days. Our first session, beginning of May, for 2 days. And our last session is, we've got it broken out into 3 here because it is 3 days long. Okay, this is June 12th through June 14th. Okay, these are, being able to attend these is one of those really important things again. Just like with the managers, you got to be there for everything to get the benefit out of this, or the most benefit out. Okay. And we understand that that can be disruptive for scheduling. And that's why we're also talking to your managers about this, is because we know that you're going to need the time to be able to do this. And oftentimes as engineers, we're not in control of our schedule. As such, the application, again, we're collecting a lot of general information that you're used to, some questions about your facility and your team so that we can understand how this training can best benefit you. And down here at the bottom, we've got some information for related towards reviewing the schedule so that you know you can be there and that you've got your supervisor's support in doing this. Okay. Larry, Peter, anything else you wanted to talk about on the website?
No, I think you covered it very comprehensively, Robert. Thank you. I would say, please apply as soon as possible, because I think Larry mentioned it early on. We only have 24 slots available for facility managers and for building engineers. We use the term building engineer. It's a generic term. Everybody has a different word. Operating engineer, stationary engineer, steam fitter. So we're just using that term as a generic term. But please, if you are interested and have support and think this is for you, please register as soon as possible, because it will be kind of a first come, first serve basis. And we have a couple of questions in chat. We could, I don't know, are we ready to start Q&A, Larry? Or are we?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I can read the first question.
Okay.
Yeah, this is from Jay Millette, who is a facilities manager. And the question is this: we don't have a BAS, only 2 standalone systems, one from Daikin and another from Aon. I hope I pronounced that correctly. I can access both of them from my desktop. Should I take the training?
So that's a great question. And despite them being standalone manufacturer systems, they are still building automation systems. You may not have all the bells and whistles that a full BAS has. You may not have the full level of access to it, but getting a better understanding of how the systems operate would still be useful, yes. So I would encourage you to apply for the training.
Here's another question from Anthony, and I might ask him to expand on this. Any suggestions for building engineer training? So Anthony, if you'd like to type it, or you can unmic yourself and just ask your question. Okay, why don't we come back to that one? All right.
That that next question, we have received from Ivan, it looks like, or Ivanar. We have received your application. We are reviewing the applications as quickly as we can, and we'll notify you as quickly as we can.
Yeah. When you apply, you do not get an automatic reply email at this time. It's one of those where we are collecting the applications right now. So please be patient with us. We will get back as soon as we can on those. Looks like Anthony has expanded. Just curious on what path one would take for a building engineer. If you're a building engineer, then I'm going to show screen again real quick. We would very much encourage you to go down the building engineer route. If you're a building manager, if you're not the person who is getting their hands into the electrical boxes, into the mechanical system on a daily basis, if you are more the manager of people and budgets, we encourage going down the manager track. If you're working on the systems, if you're, what we often refer to as a boots on the ground person, then you're going to be better off headed for the engineer's track.
And I think, Robert, to that point, we would definitely be encouraging chief engineers and assistant chiefs to attend the engineering training, the building engineer training, correct?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. And there's another question in the chat, Larry.
Yes. This says, I work with an energy management company. We work on BAS controls for energy efficiency. Do I need to apply for the training as an engineer? So it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, that you currently work as a consultant. Is that correct? Yeah, the answer is yes.
And so how would you respond to that question, Robert?
I think that would be what I would request in that situation is that you reach out to us. Here before the end, Larry will put up the contact information for if you have any questions after this, especially with the application process or anything like that. In that for you, I would encourage you to reach out to us with a quick question to follow up on that, so that we can reach out and have a little bit of a discussion and understand what your goals are, what your tasks are, to see if this is a useful training for you. sorry to provide a not answer, but in this situation, I think we need more information than would be convenient to gather at this time.
Yeah, I'm putting a link to the training website here in the chat. I will also put in my email address.
More questions? Don't be shy.
I'm going to throw out a hypothetical question. Say an emergency comes up and I have to miss a class. Is there any way I can make that up?
We'll work with you on that. We understand that emergencies happen, so it's definitely something that we will work with you on. Not promising that we can, absolutely make everything up, especially the hands-on, but we'll work with you to deal with that.
Yeah, and I would say we are sympathetic to the fact that emergencies happen in the building environment. If you can commit to and we know it's a lift to get the release time you need to participate in all of the sessions. So if you can make that lift and you can commit to it, we know that things will happen. So, but we had a question about others from DGS. We know that, Lisa, that a number of people signed up. I don't know whether they're in attendance or not, but if they could not make it, they can watch the recording, which will be up very shortly, actually. By the end of the week, this recording will be available on the web portal website.
And Kim already put the link to the YouTube channel where it will also be posted.
Okay.
But if there is anybody from DGS, if you would kindly give Lisa a quick shout in the chat when you get a second, that would be appreciated. We do have two related questions, both about the cost of these trainings. And that's one of those fantastic things, because this is a training that's being funded by DOE, there is no cost for the training itself. Now, if you are looking at the building engineer training where there is in-person training, the travel and housing and food expenses are on you. You are responsible for those. Unfortunately, there isn't enough in the budget for us to be able to foot those bills as much as we would like to.
We will be providing lunch, however, for the in-person sessions and refreshments and so forth. When we know that releasing a chief engineer or a building engineer from the job is an expense in and of itself. So we know that's a lift for you, but we really encourage you to participate and take advantage of this. Everything else is free.
And
Peter,
if any,
this is Jing. I suggest that we also towards the end encourage people to unmute and ask questions verbally if that's easier for them.
do we have a training facility closer to Southern California?
Not at this time. If we get good results and DOE is pleased with what the outcomes are, we may at some future point be able to, we have offered training in Southern California in the past. So it's I wouldn't rule it out, but right now we're focused here in the Bay Area.
Yes, and this training is, enabled by advanced testing facility here at LBNL, a facility called Flex Lab. So it's multiple test beds of the full scale of commercial space scale with real HVAC systems, lighting, plug loads. And we have incorporated a commercial BAS system that that now can be accessed both on site as well as remotely. That's how we leverage this capability to allow our both in-person and remote participants to practice using the features of BAS systems and do all the programming that Robert will be teaching. So that's why the in-person training will be based here in Berkeley on LBNL site. So hopefully that's also helpful to the earlier training facility question.
And just to follow up on Jing's point, the sessions that are remote will actually be interacting with the system at LBL, even though you are in a remote location. You'll be asked to be on a computer and you'll be doing work with the system.
Yep. Absolutely. And let's face it, how often do you get the opportunity to work in a building, to experiment, to play, to have a safe environment to make mistakes? How often do we get that ability with real active buildings? That's what one of the huge things that LBL brings to this and the Flex Lab brings to this.
That's right. Our test bed is basically going to be our sandbox.
Yeah.
Right.
So Steve Wilson asks, when will more info about the instructor training be available? It's a great question, Steve, and we appreciate it. I don't have an answer for that. Larry, Peter?
Larry?
Yeah. Hey, Steve, good to see you. A lot of the basic parameters around our faculty workshops will be similar to the ones we've conducted in the past. But, Robert laid out just some preliminary topics for the faculty training right on that slide. So, we'll be continuing to develop that in more detail and then sharing that with faculty. I would hope that we could make, more detailed announcement within, the next few weeks or so.
Looks like we are at our time. Larry, do you want to toss up that last slide so that we can end with contact information?
Yeah, sure. Hold on.
While Larry's doing that, thank you everyone for taking the time to attend today. We hope we've given you some stuff to think about and an opportunity to gain some more tools for running your buildings. And as Larry said, upskilling your technicians and yourselves. So Lisa, yes, this webinar will be, or the recording of this will be available on the YouTube link and will also be available on the registration website. So the link that's just above a couple of items in the chat.
Yes, and again, yeah, we encourage especially the building engineers to apply early. talk with your supervisors about getting approval for time off, being able to also, make the in-person sessions here as well. Whatever
Released
your institution prefers to call it.
No, we're not expecting people to take vacation days to attend.
Well, on that note, thank you all for joining. Much appreciated. There's a lot to do. We know you don't have a lot of time, but this is a great opportunity, and hopefully you'll be able to take excellent advantage of it. And I just invite the team with any kind of closing remarks.
Thank you again, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everyone.
All right, thank you. Thank you to the National Science Foundation and Department of Energy. All right, have an excellent day.